Godzilla Minus One was released on November 3, 2023. Box office revenue in Japan exceeded $36 million. It was released in America and was a big hit. The film exceeded $61.1 million in worldwide box office revenue and broke new ground for Japanese films that were recognized around the world. This work commemorates the 70th anniversary of Godzilla's birth, and is the 30th Japanese version of Godzilla, the first in 7 years since Shin Godzilla. The director is Takashi Yamazaki, Japan's leading VFX expert. This is a long-awaited masterpiece that takes on the challenge of a Godzilla work. The level of perfection of this work is extremely high, as it can be talked about in a wide range of ways, including movie reviews, and Godzilla fans were excited from beginning to end, saying, "This is the strongest Godzilla I've ever wanted to see." They were able to enjoy the movie, sometimes tearing up at times. Now, I would like to talk about the movie, but I would like to focus on the main points. All the weapons of the former Japanese army that appeared in Godzilla Minus One. Another movie to enjoy for history and military buffs. Although I am a maniac, I will talk about the many weapons that appeared in Godzilla Minus One, one by one. It also contains spoilers, so please be careful when watching. Let me briefly introduce the historical background. The story begins in 1945, at the end of the Pacific War, and continues until 1947, when post-war reconstruction began, when Godzilla attacks Japan and terrorizes the people. After the war, Japan was defeated and disarmed by GHQ, leaving it a defenseless country with no organized army or weapons. The Police Reserve Force, the predecessor of the Self-Defense Forces, had not even been established yet, and Godzilla was about to attack a completely naked Japan with no means of fighting. We hope that the US military in Japan as an occupation force will play an active role here, but the US military withdraws from exterminating Godzilla out of fear of provoking the Soviet Union on the continent with a large-scale military operation. All that is left in Japan are the wisdom of former military personnel and people, and the few remaining old weapons. The situation is truly in a state of dire straits. Now, let's take a look at the weapons that appear in order. Zero Fighter. At the beginning, a Zero Fighter piloted by the main character, Koichi Shikishima, appears. The Zero Fighter, officially known as the Zero Carrier-based fighter, is a carrier-based fighter built for the purpose of taking off from aircraft carriers at sea. In order to maximize the performance of the weak Japanese-made engine, which is weaker than that of Western engines, the aircraft was designed to be completely lightweight. The high air combat ability produced by its light aircraft is also famous for fearing the US military in the early stages of the war. The Zero Fighter that appeared in the movie is a bomb-equipped aircraft that was operated as a kamikaze attack force at the end of the war. The story begins with an emergency landing on Oto Island in the Ogasawara Islands due to an aircraft malfunction, but Oto Island is the terrifying island where Godzilla lives. The former Japanese military garrison is wiped out by Godzilla's attack. When Godzilla attacks, Shikishima tries to shoot Godzilla with his Zero Fighter's 20mm machine gun, but he hesitates due to fear, causing the entire unit to be wiped out. If the Zero Fighter's 20mm machine gun, which was able to break through the armor of US military aircraft, had hit Godzilla, the story of the 2-hour movie might have ended here. Takao-class heavy cruiser Takao. Time moves after the war. Shikishima returns to Japan as a demobilized soldier, meets Noriko Oishi in the burnt-out Tokyo, and begins living in Tokyo with Noriko's child Akiko. In order to support the two of them, Shikishima spends his days working hard to remove mines aboard the Shinsei Maru, a ship that undertakes special post-war clearance missions. One day, when Shikishima was slowly beginning to feel the happiness returning to his heart, a nuclear test conducted by the US military at Bikini Atoll endowed Godzilla, who was nearby, with a mortal life force. A US military ship is attacked by a mysterious giant creature in the Pacific Ocean, causing great damage. GHQ notifies Japan of the giant creature's approach, but withdraws from efforts to exterminate Godzilla. While there was little time left before Godzilla reached Japan, the former Japanese Navy's heavy cruiser Takao, which remained in Singapore, was chosen to destroy Godzilla. Takao was the first of the Takao-class cruisers commissioned in 1932, and was one of the most powerful cruisers of the former Japanese Navy, and was a decorated warship that had been active in numerous naval battles. At the end of the Pacific War, Takao was torpedoed and severely damaged by a US submarine during the Battle of Leyte Gulf, where she sortied with the battleships Yamato and Musashi. She was unable to return to mainland Japan and remained in the port of Singapore until the end of the war. The actual Takao was handed over to the British Army on October 29, 1946 and was sunk in the Straits of Malacca. Takao from Godzilla Minus One appears in the form of being returned to Japan in a hurry in order to destroy Godzilla. While the Shinsei Maru attracts Godzilla and buys time, Takao rushes to Japan. Takao arrives at the battle area with Godzilla just before Shikishima and his friends are attacked by Godzilla. The heavy cruiser's 8-inch main gun begins attacking Godzilla. This is the first scene in which Takao is truly depicted in CG in a Japanese movie, and the battle begins with great excitement. The effect of Takao's main cannon, which is believed to be one of the largest to hit Godzilla in all previous works, is also a noteworthy highlight. Although it succeeds in delivering a certain blow, Godzilla quickly moves on to counterattack. As Godzilla attacks the hull of the ship, Takao nearly capsizes and the bridge is destroyed, but they are able to shoot Godzilla at zero distance and drive it to the bottom of the sea. Before I could feel relieved at the fleeting moment of victory, the sea around the cruiser began to glow blue. In the next moment, Takao is instantly destroyed by Godzilla's heat rays. The simple defeat of the heavy cruiser Takao, on which Japan had placed its hope for victory, became a shocking scene that showed off Godzilla's new fear and high fighting ability. Despite receiving damage, Godzilla triumphs and roars towards the sky. Severely injured, Shikishima lost consciousness as he watched the horror. Type 4 medium tank. After winning the naval battle, Godzilla lands in Tokyo and overruns Ginza. Godzilla mowing down people who are running away is terrifying. The Godzilla theme song plays, signaling that the biggest highlight has begun. Shikishima flees from Ginza with Noriko. A bombardment was applied to the approaching Godzilla. What appeared was a large number of Type 4 medium tanks. They fired at Godzilla in Ginza from in front of the National Diet Building. The Type 4 medium tank is a Japanese Army medium tank completed in February 1945, and mass production began near the end of the war as a vehicle with a certain level of offensive and defensive performance among Japanese tanks that were said to be weak. Although there are various theories, it is said that only 2 to 6 vehicles were completed by the end of the war, so in the film, all of them were probably saved for the decisive battle on the mainland, and they were returned to Japan and participated in the attack on Godzilla. The tank gun it carries is a 3-inch gun, which is less powerful than the 8-inch gun on the heavy cruiser Takao, so Godzilla doesn't seem to mind. However, perhaps because he was in a bad mood, he reacted to the shelling and created the opportunity to emit the second heat ray in the play. The fate of the Type 4 medium tank is unknown, but Tokyo is destroyed by Godzilla's heat rays. Separated from Noriko, Shikishima vows revenge against Godzilla. Kagero-class destroyer Yukikaze. A few days after the destruction of Tokyo, people gather their wisdom in preparation for Godzilla's relanding. Post-war Japan was in a state of anarchy, and there was no government to rely on, so it was decided to defeat Godzilla only with the civilian power of former soldiers, private companies, and ordinary people. Based on the strategy plan drawn up by Kenji Noda, the operation to destroy Godzilla, named Operation Wadatsumi, begins. By the way, Wadatsumi is the god of the sea in Japanese mythology, and it also refers to the sea or ocean itself. This strategy may be aimed at positioning Godzilla as the god of the sea and forcing him to sink into the depths of the ocean. The plan involves 2 destroyers towing a wire tied to a large amount of cylinders filled with chlorofluorocarbon gas and wrapping it around Godzilla. All 4 participating destroyers were survivors of the Pacific War, and Yukikaze became their flagship. Yukikaze was completed in 1940 as the 8th Kagero-class destroyer. While participating in the major naval battles of the Pacific War, his own ship survived until the end of the war without suffering any major damage. Yukikaze also sortied when the battleship Yamato made a special attack on Okinawa, and despite suffering near total damage, including the sinking of Yamato, she returned safely. Because of this, it has been called the Miracle Destroyer and Lucky Ship, and is famous as a popular ship in modern times. In the historical story, the Yukikaze was handed over to the Allies as a reparation ship after the war, but in the story, it is returned to Japan and used in Operation Wadatsumi. Because it had been disarmed, the returned destroyer's main gun barrels had been removed, making it incapable of combat with artillery fire. Together with the destroyer Hibiki, Yukikaze carries out the dangerous mission of sailing around Godzilla and wrapping wire around it, and they successfully complete the mission. Coincidentally, Yukikaze in the story also makes it back alive without suffering any major damage, so she is depicted as a lucky ship here as well. Fubuki-class destroyer Hibiki. There is another destroyer that played an active role in Operation Watatsumi along with Yukikaze. This is Hibiki, the 22nd Fubuki-class destroyer. While many of the 24 sister ships of the Fubuki-class destroyers sank throughout the Pacific War, Hibiki, which was commissioned in 1933, survived the war and served as a demobilization transport ship after the war. She was then handed over to the Soviet Union as a reparation ship and served until 1970. During the story, she is transferred to Japan along with Yukikaze and others, and plays an important role in the Godzilla annihilation mission. By sailing face-to-face so close to the destroyer Yukikaze, they succeeded in wrapping wires around Godzilla. He successfully accomplishes his mission and returns alive. Minekaze-class destroyer Yukaze. 4 destroyers were returned to Japan for Operation Watatsumi. As the aforementioned destroyers, Yukikaze, and Hibiki wrap wires around Godzilla, they must fend off attacks from heat rays. Although it is a destroyer that can sail at high speed, as a ship it is bound to fall prey to Godzilla's heat rays. Therefore, as a strategy to block Godzilla's heat rays, Yukaze advances towards Godzilla along with the destroyer Keyaki, which will be described later. You will have them use heat rays to buy time until they can attack again. The operation is successful, and Godzilla uses heat rays on Yukaze and Keyaki. Although both ships were destroyed, they contributed to the success of the mission by buying time for Godzilla to attack again. The historical Yukaze was completed in 1921 as the 10th Minekaze-class destroyer, and was engaged in operations in various areas of the Pacific War. She was already an old destroyer during the Pacific War, and was used for rear convoy escort duties and as an aircraft carrier patrol ship, and remained intact in Beppu Bay at the end of the war. After the war, she served as a demobilization transport ship and transported many repatriated soldiers to the mainland, before being handed over to England. Matsu-class destroyer Keyaki. Along with the destroyer Yukaze, it will appear as a destroyer that advances to block Godzilla's heat rays in Operation Watatsumi. Although it is destroyed by Godzilla's heat rays, it contributes to the breakthrough to the success of the mission. The historical fact of Keyaki is that she was completed in 1944 as the 18th Matsu-class destroyer. It was designed as a wartime mass-produced destroyer because many destroyers were sunk in the Pacific War, and 32 ships were built, the largest number in the Japanese Navy. At the end of the war, 18 ships remained, and Keyaki was handed over to the United States as a reparation ship and disposed of as a target ship in 1947. Interceptor Shinden. It appears in the movie as an aircraft to attract Godzilla's attention and guide him to the sea. The passenger is the main character, Shikishima, a former Zero fighter pilot who is searching for a remaining aircraft that can be used for Godzilla guidance operations, when he discovers this aircraft gathering dust in a warehouse. Although this is simply a depiction of a surviving airplane, this Shinden is a popular aircraft among military fans, and is a rare aircraft that is referred to as a phantom fighter due to its unique appearance and military history. In the work, Shinden is piloted by Shikishima and participates in Godzilla guidance operations. He successfully provokes Godzilla, who has re-landed in Tokyo, and guides him to the sea where the destroyer fleet is waiting. When the fleet is in crisis, he attacks Godzilla from the sky with a machine gun to attract attention, contributing to the success of the operation, and ultimately plays an active role as the one who delivers the decisive blow to Godzilla. The historical Shinden only made a test flight in August 1945 and has no actual combat experience, but its development purpose was to intercept the US military's Boeing B-29 Superfortress flying to mainland Japan at high altitude. It is a fighter plane, and its high-speed flight was beautifully depicted in the movie. How was it? There are many other ships that appear in the movie, but this time I introduced the movie by including the weapons that were mainly used. Godzilla Minus One is a work that can talk about many things, not just weapons. We would be happy if you could give us your comments and opinions. I have added one more movie that I want to talk about with many people. Please subscribe to the channel and give us a high rating, as it will encourage us in the future. Thank you for your viewing. Let's meet again. Goodbye.